You're talking a little bit about kind of the synergies that were there with this buyer, and maybe you can elaborate on that because it's pretty important on why they really were the best buyer.
Yeah, you quickly helped us understand that they were the best buyer because they were in the region. They were capacity challenged to an extent, and it was a great match because of our capacity excess. So because they were already in the region, you felt that they were able to capture all of the synergies available in this transaction versus an out-of-region buyer who would be basically kind of just assuming our role.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things. We're always looking at synergies because that's where we can kind of get outsized, returns for a buyer when somebody can realize more by combining the two companies than they can on their own. There's usually different types of synergies. And in your particular case, you checked all the boxes.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, you guys had sales synergies where you guys had products they didn't have, and you guys could do cross-selling. You had cost synergies because you guys could buy more volume and you have more leverage with suppliers and growers because of the larger. You had customer synergies because you were selling to the same customers, and they would basically pair you guys against each other and try and get the lowest price, and you guys have to chase yourself to the bottom. And so, just across the board, and probably the biggest one obviously was the capacity. You had excess capacity and they had limited capacity.
Yeah, and I think another meaningful synergy was transportation.
Mm-hmm.
When you go from shipping LTL to straight loads, that's a huge savings on freight cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys also had a pretty significant asset in the size facility you had with cold storage.
Yeah.
Because cold storage is such a, just the limit of it out there. And for them to try and find enough cold storage would have been very difficult. And for them to build it from scratch
very expensive.
Would be very expensive and take a long time.
Very expensive, take a long time. Sizing it correctly when you're doing a new build is very difficult to judge. Mm-hmm. So it was a good situation. And
then that also kind of played into the dynamic with the out-of-market players, and there was one big out-of-market player that really wanted to get in the market. So having that competitive dynamic within the transaction process, I felt was important because either side kind of knew that if you guys didn't team up, there was a chance that the third party was going to come in, or potentially that party from out of state could buy or merge with one of you, and then the other one would kind of be at a disadvantage because it was a much larger player. And also that player didn't have capacity. They'd either have to build, which takes time, or they have to acquire.
Right.
So that was pretty important as well.
Exactly.
To having them as almost a stalking horse out there, that if you couldn't get a reasonable deal done, that there was another player that could really shift the dynamics.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were so much as a stalking horse. I think they were a viable candidate, for the transaction. Mm-hmm. And speaking of the synergies, that's exactly why that my assumption before we brought you into the transaction was that we're basically 95% of the way there, just by the nature of our businesses, right? Because I knew those synergies were there. I knew that the buyer knew those synergies were there. I kind of thought it wouldn't take much to get them to be on the same page, but I wasn't considering all of the diligence items that we ended up knocking out, right? All of the things that we have to go through and show and reports that we created.